Hello again everyone, I had a lot of fun making the last video, which was a first turn win or going infinite, and those people who commented seemed to enjoy it too, so I thought I'd do something similar again today. This time though, we're doing a smash up first turn lock. That means at the end of the first turn in the game, you'll have no cards in hand, in the deck, in the discard pile, or any minions under your control in play. You can literally do nothing until your opponents let you back into the game. So for the housekeeping rules, while this is theoretically possible, in reality it's so unlikely that it will just never happen. We're doing this at a 4-player count. This may be possible with 3 players, but I don't think it can be done with 2 players. You just can't give enough cards away and draw enough cards for it to be viable. As with last time, we're always going to be drawing perfectly, and if I ever draw and don't mention a card, or it's the image of a card back, then it just isn't important for this scenario. We're using Wizard and Anti-Tails, and these are the only cards that we'll be using from both factions. So when we're putting cards into other players' hands, it's just not these 14 cards. So with that out of the way, let's look at the setup. We're going to be using these 2 bases, the Homeworld and Winter Squashed. Now, unlike the last video where we were completely abusing the Homeworld, you don't actually need to use the Homeworld. I originally started with Fairy Circle, however all the Homeworld does is make the scenario slightly faster, and it cuts out about 4 or 5 moves, so really I'm just using it to make the video a little shorter. As last time, I've got some numbers around the outside to help you keep track of what the important counts are as we go through. Starting at the top with the number in the blue box, that's the current move count. The number in red at the top is the number of actions that we have available. For all of the numbers, it shows the counts at the end of the move. Then we have the number of cards in the deck, the number of cards in the discard pile. For the discard pile graphic, I tried to keep it accurate as to what card would be at the top of the discard pile. There'll be times when there's only 1 card in the discard pile and it's not showing anything being there. That's because the card is in the current move, and it will be going to the discard pile at the end of the move, and I thought it'd be too confusing to have it on the screen twice. We then have the count for the number of cards we put into other players' hands, and then finally we've got an Acebo tracker, just so that you can see how many counters are on Acebo. It won't always be the same as how many cards are in other players' hands. In our hand we have Acebo, Pot of Wisdom, Time Loop, Winds of Change, and then 1 other card. It can be any card because it's just not an important one. So let's get started. This lock is basically split into 2 equal phases. The first phase is carefully keeping the chain going until we can get to a point where we can draw the rest of the deck. The second trickier phase is then to keep looping cards and gradually reducing the size of our hand to 0. This is actually more difficult than it sounds because it's very easy to have 1 card left that you just can't get rid of, but I'll explain that when we come to it. The first move is to play Acebo onto the Homeworld, which will grant us an extra minion play of power 2 or less, which we'll be using much later in the scenario. Next we're going to play Time Loop. Check out my question down in the comments below. Then we'll play Pot of Wisdom, drawing 3 non-important cards and putting them straight into other players' hands. We'll then play Winds of Change, shuffling our other card in hand back into the deck, and drawing the Perfect Gift, Ear of Corn, and 3 other cards. We're then going to play Ear of Corn, shuffling Time Loop, Pot of Wisdom, and Winds of Change back into the deck, and placing Ear of Corn into another player's hand. We're then going to play the Perfect Gift, and here you can see the discard pile says 1, but it isn't showing anything. That's because the Perfect Gift is going to the discard pile at the end of this move. I'm going to grab Winds of Change from the deck and play it, and then placing it into another player's hand. Getting 2 Collecting Stories, Let It Be Full and Eat, Pot of Wisdom, and Time Loop. We'll play Time Loop again, then we'll play Pot of Wisdom, and then Collecting Stories to get Winds of Change back from the other player's hand to replay it ourselves. Getting Let It Be Full and Eat, Trading Stories, Collecting Stories, and 2 other cards. We'll play the other copy of Collecting Stories to replay Ear of Corn from another player's hand. Ear of Corn goes back into another player's hand after it's played. We'll shuffle the previously played Collecting Stories, Time Loop, and Winds of Change back into the deck. Now we'll play Let It Be Full and Eat, drawing 2 and placing it into another player's hand. We'll just happen to draw into Time Loop and Winds of Change from the top of the deck. We'll play Time Loop again, and Winds of Change again, drawing into Trading Stories, Collecting Stories, and 3 other cards. We'll play the Collecting Stories to play Ear of Corn, shuffling Pot of Wisdom, the Perfect Gift, and Time Loop back into the deck, and here you can see how the Acebo count and hand count don't always match, as Ear of Corn doesn't change the hand count but it keeps increasing the Acebo number. We'll then play Trading Stories to get rid of those 3 other cards we had in our hand, to draw 3, and what do you know, we draw into the exact 3 that we shuffled back into our deck the move before. We're now approaching the end of phase 1, so we'll play Time Loop again, and then Pot of Wisdom, and you can see that Acebo is now at 21 power, so we'll play the Perfect Gift to get sacrificed from the deck, and we'll sacrifice Acebo to draw 21 cards. The Acebo counter has now gone from the left hand side as it is no longer relevant, it won't be coming back into play. Partway through drawing these 21 cards, you'll need to shuffle your discard pile back to form a new deck, and that'll leave us with 2 cards left in the deck, and then the Perfect Gift and Acebo in the discard pile. Remember that Sacrifice goes into another player's hand. Now we're in phase 2, and the issue here is that we need to get rid of cards but keep the exact cards that we need as well. The problem is that Trading Stories and Pot of Wisdom are the only real way to get rid of cards, but both go to the discard pile when they're played. So how do we get rid of them? That's going to be the conundrum. We'll start by playing Time Loop again, then we'll play Pot of Wisdom, drawing back into Time Loop that we'll play once again. We'll then play Summon, which will give us an extra minion play to go alongside the one that we banked way earlier from the homeworld. We'll then play Trading Stories, and the situation we're trying to end up with is 1 card in the discard pile and just Enchantress and Akie the Turtle in hand. We'll play Pot of Wisdom, which leaves us with 15 cards in our hand. We'll then play Time Loop again, and Trading Stories again, and Time Loop again. Remember, we can do this because we have so few cards in the deck and discard pile now that we're constantly drawing our entire deck each time. We'll then play Pot of Wisdom again, and then Trading Stories again, and at the end of this turn you have just 6 cards in your hand: Akie the Turtle, Enchantress, Pot of Wisdom, the Perfect Gift, Time Loop, and 1 other card. And then you've also got Trading Stories in the discard pile. So now we'll play the Perfect Gift, and because our deck is empty we have to shuffle our discard pile to form a new deck, which means that we can only hit Trading Stories and play it again, but this time remember it will go into another player's hand instead of the discard pile. So we'll give away Pot of Wisdom, Time Loop, and the other card. The Perfect Gift goes to the discard pile, and we've engineered the situation, so we'll play Enchantress onto Winter Squashed, using our homeworld extra play. After resolving Enchantress, we give it away with Winter Squashed, and then we play Akie the Turtle to give the Perfect Gift away, which seems very fitting to give the perfect gift of a lock to our opponents. And like Enchantress, we'll give Akie away to end up with 38 of our cards in opponents' hands, and 2 minions in their control on Winter Squashed. We are completely locked out of the game, there is nothing we can do now. Obviously now, as your opponents start to play and discard cards, there'll be a slow trickle of cards that come back to us, but they control what they give back, and remember that if they discard them they go to our discard pile, which means that we'll only draw them at the end of our next turn. Even then they can still manipulate what they give to us. They could play our minions and discard their own cards, they could give us back Feather Gifts or Pot of Beans, which we can't play, as they're completely dead cards. And when we eventually do get meaningful cards back, that we can actually start to play the game again, we'll be too far behind and the game will be over. And all of this happened on the very first turn of the game. So what did you think of this Smash Up block? I really enjoyed doing this and the other first turn game break video. Let me know down in the comments below, and with that being said, I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.